never thought the smell of vanilla cake and the sound of cheap office balloons popping would forever be tied to the worst day of my professional life. My birthday should have been a moment of celebration, laughter, maybe a surprise from my coworkers, even a few kind words. Instead, it became the backdrop of my humiliation. That morning, I walked into the office feeling lighter than usual. I wore my best blazer, a gift from my sister, and even treated myself to a fancy coffee on the way. I had no idea that by the end of the day, I'd be standing in front of my colleagues, stripped of dignity as my boss grinned like a villain who had finally won. The nightmare started right after lunch. My coworkers had gathered around, awkwardly singing Happy Birthday, their voices echoing off the sterile walls of the conference room. Someone brought out a cake with Happy Birthday, scrawled in too bright blue frosting. I smiled, trying to act normal, but the entire time I noticed the strange glances they exchanged. It wasn't just the usual office awkwardness. It felt heavier, like they knew something I didn't. And then, just as I was about to cut the cake, my boss, Mr. Stanton, cleared his throat in a way that silenced the room. Before we continue, with this, he gestured at the cake with thinly veiled disdain, I need to make an announcement. The room froze. My coworkers shifted in their chairs, some looking down at their shoes, others fidgeting with napkins. My heart thumped louder than the cheap party speaker humming in the background. Mr. Stanton's voice was cold, sharp, each word cutting through me like glass. As of today, we will no longer require your services here. Consider this your final day. At first, I thought I misheard. I laughed nervously, waiting for him to smirk, maybe reveal it was some twisted office joke. But no one laughed. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the faint hiss of a balloon deflating in the corner. My chest tightened. My birthday cake sat untouched in front of me, the candle smoke still curling in the air like a cruel reminder. You're firing me? My voice cracked, echoing across the room. On my birthday? Mr. Stanton didn't flinch. He adjusted his tie and said, Business decisions don't wait for personal occasions. You should understand that by now. The way he said it, so smug, so rehearsed, made my blood boil. My coworkers avoided my eyes, except for Jenna from accounting, who looked at me with pity. Pity. That was worse than silence. I felt heat rush. Up my face, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the table. The cake knife slipped from my fingers, clattering against the tray, the sound piercing the room like a gunshot. I wanted to scream, to demand answers. To ask how the man I had worked tirelessly for, pulling late nights and sacrificing weekends, could toss me aside like trash. On the very day I thought they'd at least celebrate me as a human being. But words tangled in my throat. My lips quivered, and instead of speaking, I just stood there, humiliated, my birthday crown slipping crookedly on my head. Pack your things, Stanton added curtly, turning his back on me as if I were nothing more than a dismissed intern. Security will escort you out. The gasps in the room told me my coworkers were just as shocked as I was, but none of them dared to intervene. My heart pounded in my ears, my stomach churned, and I felt tears sting my eyes. No, I wouldn't let him see me cry. Not here. Not in front of everyone. I clenched my fists, digging my nails into my palms, forcing myself to stay upright even though my legs wanted to buckle. It was my birthday, and I was being discarded like yesterday's trash. As I stumbled back to my desk, the whispers began. I could hear them, faint but sharp, slicing through me like knives. Why today? That's so cruel. She doesn't deserve this. The sympathy in their voices only deepened the humiliation. My desk, once a space filled with files, sticky notes, and little reminders of my dedication, suddenly looked foreign, cold, temporary. I shoved my things into a box, my movements frantic, almost desperate, as if clearing the desk would erase the shame. And then, the worst part, the security guard arrived. He wasn't unkind, he even muttered a quiet sorry, but the act itself was devastating. I was being paraded through the office, a box in my arms, my eyes burning with unshed tears. Coworkers avoided looking at me directly, pretending to be busy with their screens, their keyboards clacking nervously. Every step felt like a funeral march, except I wasn't dead. I was just invisible now. At the elevator, I turned one last time. Stanton stood in his office doorway, arms crossed, a smug smirk tugging at his lips. That image seared itself into my brain, fueling a fire I didn't yet know how to unleash. He thought he had won. He thought he had crushed me. But what he didn't know, and what I couldn't yet see, was that fate had other plans. Because the people sitting above him, the very board of directors he thought he controlled, had been watching him too. And they had a surprise waiting, one that would flip his smug little world upside down. I didn't know it yet, but my birthday wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. My name is Marissa Hale. I'm 32 years old, born and raised in Denver, Colorado, though the city skyline always felt too big for the small dreams I carried as a kid. My father was a postal worker, and my mother taught elementary school until her health forced her into early retirement. We weren't wealthy, but they raised me with values that stuck. Work hard, stay honest, and treat others with dignity, no matter their title. I clung to those lessons like lifelines as I stepped into adulthood, believing that the corporate world would reward dedication. But after what happened on my birthday, those lessons felt more like naive illusions than guiding truths. When I first joined Stanton & Co., I was fresh out of grad school. My degree in finance hadn't come easy. I'd worked part-time jobs to pay for classes, sometimes skipping meals just to afford textbooks. Getting hired at a mid-sized but growing firm felt like a dream. I was eager, determined, maybe even too willing to sacrifice myself for the job. In those early years, I practically lived at the office, crunching numbers long after the janitors had left. I thought I was proving myself. I thought Mr. Stanton saw my loyalty. And maybe, in a twisted way, he did, but not as something to reward. He saw it as something to exploit. He'd praise me in front of clients. Marissa is one of the hardest workers we've got. But behind closed doors, he piled more work onto my plate without extra pay. "You can handle this, can't you? You're sharp," he'd say, and I'd smile, eager for approval. It wasn't until later that I realized every compliment was a hook, every opportunity just another weight dragging me down. Still, I believed I could climb. I told myself that sacrifices now would lead to stability later. I dreamed of one day buying my parents a nicer home, maybe even helping with my mom's medical bills. And slowly, I began to make a name for myself in the company. Colleagues trusted me, clients relied on me, and the board members often copied me on emails because I delivered results faster than anyone else. But Stanton, he hated it. Looking back, I can see the signs. His jaw tightening when board members asked for my input in meetings. The way he'd interrupt me mid-sentence, only to rephrase my ideas as his own. Once, after I secured a huge client account, he pulled me aside and hissed, "Remember your place. Don't outshine me in front of them." His voice was low, but his eyes burned with a threat I couldn't ignore, and I tried to dim my light. I really did. I laughed off credit, deferred to him in meetings, kept my head down. But talent has a way of leaking through the cracks. The board noticed my work, whether Stanton liked it or not, and I think that's when he started planning. The weeks leading up to my birthday were tense. Stanton grew colder, more cutting in his comments. He criticized everything, my reports, my presentations, even my outfits. "That color makes you look unprofessional," he sneered once, as if navy blue could ruin a balance sheet. I brushed it off, convincing myself he was just stressed. After all, the company was heading into a critical quarter. But part of me knew he was looking for a way to push me out. I just never expected he'd do it in such a humiliating fashion, on my birthday, in front of everyone. That night, after being escorted out like a criminal, I sat in my car in the dark parking garage, clutching the box of my belongings. My hands shook as I sifted through it. Pens, a family photo, a small cactus my best friend had given me. My chest ached, and I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. I let them fall, hot and bitter, my sobs echoing in the empty space. "Why me?" I whispered into the silence. "Why today?" But the answer was clear. He wanted to break me. He wanted to make an example out of me. to show everyone else what happens when you fly too close to his sun. I drove home that night in a blur, headlights streaking like tears across my windshield. My parents called, wanting to sing me happy birthday, and I almost didn't answer. But when I heard my mom's fragile voice, full of warmth, I swallowed my pain and forced a smile she couldn't see. It was a long day, I told her, leaving out the ugly details. I didn't want to ruin their evening, but once the call ended, the anger set in. How dare he? After years of loyalty, after everything I had sacrificed, how dare Stanton throw me out like I was disposable? I thought about his smug grin, the way he stood in the doorway as security led me away. He enjoyed it. He enjoyed watching me crumble, and that thought lit a spark inside me. I didn't know how, and I didn't know when, but I promised myself one thing. Stanton wasn't going to have the last laugh. The next morning, I woke up exhausted, my eyes swollen from crying. I thought about applying for new jobs, starting fresh, moving on. But when I checked my email, something strange happened. A message from one of the board members, marked confidential, sat in my inbox. Marissa, we need to meet. There are things you don't know. My stomach flipped. Why would a board member contact me after I'd been publicly fired? What could they possibly want with me now? I stared at the email, my heart racing. And for the first time since the nightmare began, I felt a flicker of hope. I must have read that email 10 times, each word pounding in my head. We need to meet. There are things you don't know. It was signed by Evelyn Price, one of the board members I'd only ever spoken to. In passing, Evelyn was known for her sharp intellect and no-nonsense approach. She wasn't the kind of person to send vague messages without reason. Still, I hesitated. What if it was a mistake? What if Stanton had set this up as some twisted way to humiliate me further? The paranoia gnawed at me, but curiosity was stronger. With shaking hands, I typed back a cautious reply. I'm available. Where should we meet? Minutes later, her response came, tonight, 7 p.m., Café Ravel. The rest of the day crawled by. I couldn't focus on anything, my mind spinning with questions. Why did Evelyn want to see me? What things didn't I know? And why reach out now, after I'd already been fired? By the time 7 p.m. rolled around, my nerves were frayed. Café Ravel was a quiet little place tucked away from downtown. When I walked in, the warm smell of roasted coffee beans wrapped around me, soothing but not enough to calm my racing heart. Evelyn was already there, sitting by the window with a cup of tea in front of her. Her silver hair was pulled back into a neat bun, her tailored suit impeccable. She looked up as I approached, and for the first time that day, someone gave me a genuine smile. Marissa, she said, standing to shake my hand. I'm glad you came. Thank you for reaching out, I replied, my voice shaky. I sat across from her, clutching my bag like it was armor. I have to admit, I'm a little confused. Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes sharp but kind. I'm not going to waste your time. What Stanton did today was cruel, unprofessional, and entirely self-serving. But what you don't know is that his little stunt may have been the final nail in his coffin. My eyes widened. What do you mean? She sipped her tea before answering. The board has been watching Stanton for months. His behavior, his decisions, his misuse of authority, it's all been under review. We suspected he was crossing lines, but today, firing one of our top performers in such a public, demeaning way, that gave us leverage. Leverage? I repeated, stunned. You mean against him? Evelyn nodded. Exactly. You see, Stanton thinks he's untouchable, but the truth is the board has grown tired of him. His arrogance, his tendency to take credit for others' work, his disregard for employee morale, it's cost us good people. And frankly, your firing has lit a fire under the rest of the directors. Some were already leaning toward removing him. Now with this, they're convinced. I blinked, trying to process. Wait, you're saying the board wants to fire him? Evelyn's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. Let's just say we're preparing for a major shakeup, and your role in all of this is more important than you realize. My pulse quickened. My role? But I don't even work there anymore. That doesn't matter. she said firmly. You hold knowledge, Marissa. You've seen his behavior up close. You've been the target of his hostility. And you have documentation, emails, reports, messages, don't you? I thought back to the countless emails where he dismissed my concerns, the text messages sent late at night demanding revisions, the files where my name was removed from presentations. My stomach churned as I realized, yes, I had evidence. Piles of it. Yes, I whispered. I do. Evelyn's gaze softened. Then you can help us. If you're willing, we'd like you to testify at the upcoming board session. Present the evidence. Tell your story. Stanton won't see it coming. The thought of facing Stanton again made my palms sweat. The image of his smirk, his mocking tone, it all came rushing back. Could I really stand in front of him and the entire board exposing everything? I don't know if I can, I admitted, my voice trembling. He humiliated me once already. What if this backfires? What if... Marissa. Evelyn's tone was steady, almost maternal. He's counting on your silence. That's how bullies like him thrive. But you have something he doesn't, the truth. And the board will listen to you. I promise. I swallowed hard, torn between fear and a strange, rising determination. For so long, I had bent under Stanton's weight, letting him take my strength, my confidence. But now, for the first time, someone was telling me I could fight back. What happens if the board removes him? I asked cautiously. Evelyn leaned back, her eyes glinting. If the vote passes, Stanton will be out. And we'll need someone to step into the leadership void he leaves behind. Someone the team trusts. Someone who's proven herself, time and again. She let the words hang in the air before adding, someone like you. My breath caught. Me? Yes, she said simply. The board respects you more than you realize. We've seen the work you've done. We know who really carried the company's successes these past few years. Stanton can't bury that truth forever. A mix of shock and disbelief surged through. Me? Me? A potential leader? Just hours ago, I'd been escorted out like a disgraced employee, and now Evelyn was suggesting I could replace the very man who'd destroyed me? It felt surreal, impossible. And yet, part of me lit up at the thought. What do you say, Marissa? Evelyn asked, her voice calm but commanding. Are you willing to help us take Stanton down? I stared at her, my heart hammering. I could almost see Stanton's smug grin in my mind, hear his mocking voice. The humiliation, the cruelty, it all burned inside me, twisting into something sharper. Yes, I said finally, my voice steady. I'll do it. Evelyn smiled, satisfied. Good. Gather every piece of evidence you have. Emails, texts, anything. I'll arrange the meeting. And when the time comes, you'll have the board's full support. For the first time since my birthday nightmare, I felt power return to me. A spark of control, a chance for justice. But I also knew Stanton. He wasn't the type to go down without a fight. And deep inside, I sensed this battle was only beginning. The moment I left Café Ravel that night, the city lights seemed different, brighter, sharper, as though the entire world had shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving under Stanton's shadow. I had a chance to fight back. But the weight of Evelyn's request pressed heavily on me. Evidence. It sounded simple enough, but in reality, gathering it meant revisiting every bitter memory, every moment I had tried to bury just to keep functioning. That night, I barely slept. Instead, I pulled out my old laptop, digging through folders I hadn't opened in months. The further I went, the angrier I became. I found emails where Stanton had taken credit for my work, threads where he blatantly dismissed my concerns, even one where he had written, "Marissa's ideas are amateur at best. I'll handle this myself." That amateur idea? It had brought in one of the firm's biggest clients. Then there were the text messages, late-night demands, impossible deadlines, insults thinly disguised as feedback. One in particular made my blood boil. Don't get too comfortable. People like you are replaceable. Reading it now, after what he had done on my birthday, It felt like a prophecy he had been itching to fulfill. I saved everything: screenshots, PDFs, backup drives. The pile of evidence grew thicker by the hour, each file like a weapon I hadn't realized I'd been sharpening all along. But the task wasn't just about paperwork. It was emotional, too. I found voice memos I had recorded months earlier, little rants whispered into my phone during late-night walks just to release the frustration. In one, my voice cracked as I said, "He doesn't see me as a person, just a tool." Listening to my past self, broken and exhausted, made me furious. How had I let him get away with it for so long? By dawn, I had a folder labeled Stanton sitting on my desktop. It was damning, undeniable. But as I stared at it, a shiver ran down my spine. If Stanton caught wind of what I was doing, he would retaliate. I knew him too well. He thrived on control, and the idea of me slipping out of his grip would drive him insane. That thought proved true sooner than I expected. 2 days later, as I carried my laptop into a quiet library study room to organize more evidence, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered, "Marissa." His voice slithered through the line like poison. "Stanton." My stomach clenched. "How did you get this number?" I demanded. He chuckled, low and smug. "Oh, come on. Did you really think you could just walk away without me keeping tabs? You're predictable, Marissa, always so desperate to prove yourself." I froze. Did he know about Evelyn? About the board's plan? My pulse pounded in my ears. "What do you want?" "To remind you," he said, his tone sharpening, "that this industry is small. Very small. And if you even think about stirring up trouble, I can make sure you never work again. Do you understand?" His words hung in the air, dripping with threat. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said flatly. Another chuckle. "Good. Keep it that way." Then he hung up. I sat there trembling, staring at my phone screen. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough to be suspicious, which meant my time was limited. If I wanted to take him down, I had to move quickly. That night, I met with Evelyn again, sliding a flash drive across the table. "This is everything," I said, my voice firm despite the lingering fear. Evelyn glanced at me, then the drive. "He contacted you, didn't he?" I nodded. "Threatened me. Said he'd ruin my career." Her jaw tightened. Typical Stanton. Intimidation is his favorite weapon. But don't let him scare you, Marissa. Once the board sees this, his threats won't matter. Her confidence steadied me, but deep inside, doubt gnawed. Stanton was cunning. If he sensed his empire slipping, he'd do something drastic. And, as if on cue, the very next day, my phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Jenna, the co-worker who had pitied me during my firing. "Marissa, you need to be careful. Stanton's been asking around. He thinks you're planning something. Please don't come near the office." The warning sent a chill down my spine. I typed back quickly, "Thanks, Jenna. I'll be careful." But the truth was, I couldn't. Stay away forever. The board session was approaching, and Evelyn wanted me present. "Your testimony will carry more weight than any document," she had said, which meant, inevitably, I would have to stand in the same room as Stanton again. The thought made my stomach churn. Memories of his smug grin on my birthday replayed in my mind like a broken film reel. But this time would be different. This time, I wouldn't be the humiliated victim walking out with a cardboard box. I would be the one holding the knife, metaphorically speaking. Still, Stanton wasn't idle. That week, rumors began to swirl. A friend at another firm called me. "Hey, I heard Stanton's been telling people you were let go for misconduct. Something about mishandling accounts?" My blood boiled. Lies. That was his strategy now. Destroy my reputation before I could rise. He was painting me as incompetent, unethical. If enough people believed him, my testimony might lose weight. I met Evelyn again, desperation in my voice. "He's spreading lies. If people believe him, they won't," she interrupted firmly. "We'll counter his story with facts, Evidence speaks louder than gossip. But what if he destroys the evidence? What if he— Marissa, Evelyn said, her eyes locking onto mine. You're stronger than you think. You've already survived his worst. Don't let him rattle you now. Her words gave me courage, but I knew Stanton wouldn't stop. He was circling, tightening the noose, waiting for a chance to strike. And when I received an unexpected phone call from another board member, a man named Charles Greer, I realized just how tangled this web was becoming. Marissa? His voice crackled through the speaker, low and urgent. I need to warn you. Stanton suspects Evelyn is working with you. He's pushing hard to get ahead of this. He's calling in favors, twisting arms. You need to be ready for anything when the session comes. My blood ran cold. If Stanton knew Evelyn was involved, he'd come for both of us. I hung up, staring at my laptop where the folder of evidence glowed like a beacon. The battle lines were drawn. I wasn't just gathering files anymore. I was preparing for war. And Stanton? He was sharpening his claws. The week leading up to the board meeting was torture. Every hour felt like I was walking across a thin sheet of ice, waiting for Stanton to pound his fist through and drag me under. He wasn't sitting idle. No, Stanton was cunning, and when he sensed he was cornered, he lashed out like a wounded animal. The first strike came in the form of rumors, whispered through the industry like wildfire. Suddenly, colleagues from other firms were reaching out. To me. Marissa, did you really lose that big client account last year? One asked. I heard you got fired for breaching confidentiality, another said, their voice laced with suspicion. I clenched my jaw every time. Lies. Stanton was rewriting history, and his poison was spreading fast. Evelyn reassured me, don't worry. The board won't buy into gossip. They'll see the evidence. But at night, when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I wasn't so sure. Lies were powerful, especially when spoken by someone in authority. Then came the second strike, financial sabotage. I opened my bank account one morning only to find my direct deposit from Stanton & Co. had mysteriously failed. HR emails went unanswered. When I called, the receptionist gave me a clipped response. Mr. Stanton said your termination disqualified you from severance. We're not authorized to release payment. I almost threw my phone across the room. Severance wasn't a favor. It was written into my contract. He was cutting off my livelihood, punishing me for daring to exist outside his control. I called Evelyn in a panic. He's withholding my severance. I can't even pay rent this month. Her tone was sharp. That's illegal, and he knows it. Document everything. We'll use it against him. For now, I'll make sure you're not left hanging. A few hours later, she wired money to cover my immediate expenses. It wasn't just generosity, it was strategy. Evelyn understood the importance of keeping me stable and ready, but Stanton wasn't done. His third strike came in the form of intimidation. One evening, I left the library with my laptop tucked under my arm. As I walked through the dimly lit parking lot, I noticed a sleek black car idling a few rows away. My instincts prickled. The same car followed me for 3 blocks before peeling off. That night, an anonymous text arrived on my phone. Stay quiet or regret it. My hands shook as I showed Evelyn the message the next day. She narrowed her eyes. He's trying to rattle you. Don't let him. If anything, this proves how desperate he is. Desperate. Yes, Stanton was unraveling, but that made him dangerous. As the board meeting drew closer, my anxiety grew. Evelyn arranged a small prep session at her townhouse. We need to rehearse, she told me. They'll ask questions, and you need to stay composed. Her home was elegant but warm, filled with shelves of law books and family photos. She poured me tea and set out a folder. Let's walk through it, she said. I took a deep breath and began recounting everything. The emails, the late-night demands, the humiliations, the threats. My voice shook at first, but Evelyn's steady presence anchored me. Don't hold back, she encouraged. The board needs to see not just the facts, but the toll it took on you. So I let it out. I described the nights I cried in the bathroom at work, the way my chest clenched whenever I saw Stanton's name flash on my phone, the humiliation of being fired in front of everyone on my birthday. Tears welled in my eyes, but Evelyn didn't stop me. She handed me tissues, nodding softly. Good. That's the truth, and that's what they need to hear. By the end of the session, I felt drained but strangely empowered. I could do this. I had to. Still, doubt lingered. What if Stanton had bribed board members? What if they turned on me? What if this was all a trap? That fear crystallized 2 nights. Before the meeting, when I received another unexpected call, this time from Stanton himself. Marissa. His voice purred, falsely sweet. I hear you've been busy. Having coffee dates with certain board members? My stomach dropped. What do you want, Stanton? To offer you a deal, he said smoothly. Walk away. Forget whatever lies Evelyn's feeding you. In return, I'll make sure your reputation stays clean. You'll find another job, no problem. But if you go through with this, his voice hardened, you'll regret it. No one crosses me and walks away unscathed. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles whitened. You already humiliated me, ruined my career, and stole my severance. What more can you do? He chuckled. You'd be surprised. For a moment, fear nearly paralyzed me. But then I pictured Evelyn's confident gaze, the evidence on my laptop, the support I wasn't used to having. My voice steadied. No, Stanton, you'll be the one to regret underestimating me. I hung up before he could reply, my heart pounding with a mix of terror and adrenaline. The next morning, Evelyn called. Are you ready? I exhaled slowly. As ready as I'll ever be. She hesitated, then added, Marissa, there's something you need to know. The board isn't entirely united. Stanton still has allies, people he's manipulated, maybe even bribed. Tomorrow won't be easy. You'll have to stand firm. I swallowed hard. I will. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. My laptop sat open on the desk, the folder of evidence glowing like a beacon. Tomorrow, everything would come to a head. Either I'd walk into that boardroom and finally reclaim my dignity, or Stanton would crush me for good. And knowing him, he'd do everything in his power to make sure it was the latter. The morning of the board meeting felt heavier than any day of my life. My alarm buzzed at 6 a.m., but I had barely slept. My mind replayed Stanton's threats, Evelyn's reassurances, and the mountain of evidence that now sat on a sleek flash drive in my purse. I dressed carefully, a navy suit, the same one Stanton once sneered at, claiming the color made me look unprofessional. Today, I wore it like armor. As I drove downtown, the skyscrapers loomed above me, their windows reflecting the pale morning sun. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached. This is it, I told myself. No more hiding. No more fear. The headquarters of Stanton & Co. looked the same as always. Polished marble floors, chrome accents, the faint scent of coffee lingering in the lobby. But walking in as an outsider felt surreal. I had been escorted out with humiliation just days earlier. Now I was back not as an employee but as a witness, a weapon. Evelyn met me in the lobby. Her calm presence steadied my racing heart. You're on time, she said with a small nod, her eyes flicking to the flash drive in my hand. Do you have everything? Yes, I whispered. Everything. Good. Stay strong. Remember, the truth is on your side. We took the elevator to the top floor, the ride silent except for the faint hum of the cables. My stomach churned as the doors opened to the boardroom. The space was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a long mahogany table surrounded by high-backed leather chairs. At the head of the table sat Stanton, flanked by a few board members who still looked at him with loyalty. His smirk appeared the moment his eyes met mine. Well, well, he drawled, leaning back in his chair. If it isn't the birthday girl, I didn't realize this was a reunion. My chest tightened, but I kept my face neutral. Evelyn placed a hand on my shoulder before guiding me to a seat near the end of the table. The other board members shuffled papers, their expressions unreadable. Charles Greer, the one who had warned me Stanton was pressuring allies, gave me the faintest nod of encouragement. Let's begin, said the chairman, an older man named Harold Briggs. His voice carried authority, commanding the room to silence. We're here to review the recent termination of Ms. Hale and other concerns regarding the leadership of Mr. Stanton. Stanton immediately leaned forward, his tone dripping with false professionalism. I appreciate the board's time. Allow me to clarify. Ms. Hale's termination was a necessary business decision. Her performance had been slipping, her conduct questionable, and her loyalty divided. He cast a glance my way, the corners of his lips twitching. My jaw tightened, but Evelyn shot me a look. Wait. Furthermore, Stanton continued, it's important to maintain discipline in a company of this size. We can't afford employees who believe they're above protocol. It's unfortunate that her termination coincided with her personal celebration, but as I've always said, business doesn't pause for birthdays, the board members murmured among themselves. Stanton smoothed his tie, confident he had control of the narrative. My blood boiled at his lies, but I held my tongue. Finally, Evelyn cleared her throat. With all due respect, Stanton, the board deserves the full picture. That's why Ms. Hale is here today. She has evidence to support claims that go beyond a simple termination. The room shifted. Stanton's smirk faltered for a second before returning stronger, sharper. Evidence? He scoffed. I'm sure whatever she's prepared will be entertaining. My heart raced as Evelyn gave me a subtle nod. It was my turn. I stood, my legs trembling slightly, but my voice, when it emerged, was steady. Thank you, Mr. Briggs, members of the board. I never imagined I'd be standing here like this. But since Mr. Stanton brought up performance, let's start with that. I clicked my laptop, connecting it to the screen at the front of the room. The first slide appeared, an email thread where Stanton had taken credit for a client strategy I had written. This is one of many examples where my work was stripped of acknowledgement. Mr. Stanton repeatedly presented my ideas as his own. The board leaned forward. I moved to the next slide. Text messages demanding revisions at 2 a.m., followed by a dismissive, "Don't get too comfortable, you're replaceable." Gasps rippled across the room. Stanton shifted in his chair, his jaw tightening. Out of context, he snapped. Anyone can cherry-pick messages? I cut him off, my voice rising with long-suppressed anger. Out of context? How about this one? I pulled up a voice memo, playing his sneering tone. Remember your place. Don't outshine me in front of them. The room went silent. Stanton's face reddened. This isn't just about me, I continued, my hands trembling, but strong. It's about a pattern of behavior, intimidation, humiliation, exploitation. I worked nights, weekends, holidays, always under the belief that hard work would be rewarded. Instead, I was ridiculed, dismissed, and finally humiliated in front of my colleagues on my birthday. I turned to the board, my throat tightening. That wasn't leadership. That was cruelty. For a moment, no one spoke. The air was heavy, electric. Then Harold Briggs gestured toward Stanton. Do you wish to respond? Stanton's mask cracked. His voice was harsher now, the smooth facade slipping. This is a performance. She's bitter because she was let go. Do you not see it? She's been manipulated by Evelyn, who has wanted my seat for years. This is nothing but a coup. All eyes shifted to Evelyn. She remained calm, folding her hands. The evidence speaks for itself, Stanton. Attacking me won't change that. Stanton slammed his hand on the table, making several board members flinch. I built this company. You think you can tear me down with a few emails and sob stories? You're fools if you buy into this. The outburst backfired. The board exchanged wary glances. Charles Greer leaned forward, his voice measured. Mr. Stanton, control yourself. This isn't the behavior of a stable leader. My heart pounded as I realized the tide was shifting. His anger, his arrogance, it was all unraveling before their eyes. But Stanton wasn't finished. His eyes locked onto me, venomous. Careful, Marissa. You think you've won something here? You're a pawn, and pawns are easily sacrificed. A chill ran down my spine. The board members murmured again, concern etched on their faces. Evelyn whispered to me, Don't react. Let him bury himself. I sat down slowly, my hands clenched in my lap, forcing myself not to show fear. Inside, though, I was shaking. The meeting paused for a recess. As the board members filed out, Stanton remained seated, glaring at me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. He leaned closer, his voice a hiss only I could hear. "This isn't over," he whispered. "Not by a long shot." And in that moment, I knew. No matter what happened in that boardroom, Stanton wasn't going to go quietly. He was planning something worse. The recess break was supposed to be 10 minutes, but it stretched to nearly half an hour. I sat frozen at the end of the table, Evelyn by my side, as the board members drifted into smaller groups in the hallway, their murmurs muffled through the glass walls. Stanton hadn't moved an inch. He sat back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes never leaving me. It felt like being studied by a predator, one that was deciding whether to strike or wait until its prey turned its back. Evelyn leaned close, her voice a whisper. "He's shaken. Did you see his temper? That's not how a confident man reacts." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "He doesn't look shaken to me. He looks dangerous." "He is," she admitted. "But remember, the board is watching everything. Every glare, every word. The more he loses control, the more he digs his own grave." Still, her words couldn't chase away the unease twisting in my stomach. Stanton wasn't a man who accepted defeat. He was plotting. I could feel it. When the board reconvened, the atmosphere was tense. Harold Briggs rapped his gavel lightly. "Let's resume." Stanton stood before anyone else could speak. "Before we proceed further, I believe the board should review additional evidence that calls into question Ms. Hale's credibility." My stomach dropped. "What evidence?" He clapped his hands, and his assistant, a wiry man with slicked back hair, entered carrying a thick folder. Stanton took it, placing it dramatically on the table. "Inside," he said, "are confidential documents showing Ms. Hale engaged in questionable practices while employed here. I obtained these from our internal security team." Whispers filled the room. My pulse skyrocketed. Evelyn stiffened beside me. Stanton opened the folder and spread out several papers. "Here," he said, jabbing a finger at one. "An email where Ms. Hale appears to share sensitive company data with an external contact. And here, expense reports padded with questionable charges. Dozens of them. Fraudulent behavior, plain as day." I lurched forward. "That's a lie, but—" Stanton's voice thundered over mine. "She came in here pretending to be a victim. But the truth is, she's a liability. She cost this company money. She compromised our integrity. Her firing wasn't cruelty. It was mercy." The board members bent over the papers, their expressions darkening. Evelyn snatched one of the sheets and scanned it quickly, her brow furrowed. "These are doctored," she said firmly. "I can tell at a glance. The formatting is off. The metadata doesn't line up. Stanton, you fabricated this." Stanton laughed, the sound echoing coldly. "Of course you'd say that. You've always had it out for me. But the documents don't lie." I could barely breathe. My entire body trembled as panic surged through me. He was trying to flip the narrative, and worse, he had come prepared. If the board believed even a fraction of those lies, I was finished. Not just today. Forever. Charles Greer raised a hand. "We need to verify these documents before making any judgments." But Stanton pressed harder, sensing weakness. "Why? Wait! Look at them, look at her face. She's guilty, and she knows it." His eyes bored into me, triumphant, as if daring me to deny him. I forced myself to stand. My legs wobbled, but my voice rose, trembling with fury. "Those are forgeries. I never leaked company data. I never padded expenses. For years, I killed myself working for this firm. And this," I gestured at the papers scattered across the mahogany table. "This is his way of destroying me because he knows the truth is finally coming out." The room erupted into overlapping voices, board members arguing, Stanton shouting, Evelyn demanding an immediate forensic review. Then Harold Briggs slammed the gavel again. "Enough!" His booming voice silenced everyone. He turned his sharp gaze toward Stanton. "Mr. Stanton, Introducing evidence of this nature without prior disclosure is highly irregular. The board will not accept it at face value. Stanton's jaw clenched. Are you saying her word is worth more than mine? I am saying, Briggs replied evenly, that this board values verified truth, not last-minute theatrics. For the first time, Stanton's mask cracked. A flicker of rage crossed his features before he smoothed it into something colder, sharper. Very well, he said softly, almost too softly. But when you discover that I'm right, don't come crawling back. Evelyn whispered to me, we need to stay calm. They're not convinced. He overplayed his hand. But the damage was done. The board was rattled. I could see doubt in their eyes. Stanton's stunt had planted seeds, and seeds could grow into weeds if not ripped out fast. The meeting adjourned for the day, postponed until the documents could be reviewed. As the board members filed out, Stanton lingered. He straightened, his cuffs, leaned across the table and whispered so only I could hear, "You can scream all you want, but mud sticks. Even if they don't fire me, they'll never trust you again. Your name will be dirt in this industry. Happy birthday, Marissa." The cow's words hit like venom. My chest constricted. For a moment, I thought I might collapse. But then Evelyn's hand pressed lightly against my back. Her voice was steady, grounding. Don't let him win. This isn't over. I nodded faintly, but inside, doubt gnawed at me. He was right about one thing. Mud stuck. And if the board couldn't see through his lies, everything I had endured, everything I had fought for, would be wasted. Outside the building, the city bustled as if nothing had happened. People rushed to work. Horns blared, the sun glared down. But inside me, a storm raged. I wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse into a heap on the sidewalk. Instead, I walked beside Evelyn in silence, my heels clicking against the pavement like the ticking of a clock running out of time. Finally, Evelyn spoke. We'll dismantle his lies one by one. I'll get my forensic team on those documents tonight. If Stanton thinks he can outmaneuver us with forgeries, he's about to learn a painful lesson. Her confidence steadied me, but only slightly. And what if the board doesn't care? What if they just want this to go away quietly? Then we make it impossible for them to ignore. Trust me, Marissa, this fight isn't over. I exhaled shakily, gripping my purse strap until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But Stanton wasn't just fighting for his position, he was fighting for survival. And a man like that wouldn't stop until someone was utterly destroyed. The question was, would it be him? Or me? The hours after the board meeting felt like drowning in quicksand. Every minute dragged, heavy with uncertainty. Evelyn and I returned to her townhouse, where her dining table became an impromptu war room. She spread out Stanton's forged documents across the polished wood, her glasses perched on her nose as she scrutinized every page. I paced the room, my chest tight. He's going to win, isn't he? Those papers looked convincing. What if the board doesn't care whether they're forged or not? Evelyn didn't look up. Stop spiraling. The truth is on our side. These are sloppy fakes and we'll prove it. She pointed to one document. Look here, this expense report is dated on a weekend when the system doesn't even process claims. And this email, supposedly from you, the timestamp shows 3:17 a.m., but the company server marks all messages in Eastern Standard Time. This one's in Pacific. Stanton didn't even bother to adjust the metadata. Her precision calmed me slightly. She wasn't just guessing, she knew exactly where to strike. By midnight, her forensic team joined us remotely, combing through digital copies of the files. Their voices buzzed through the speakerphone. Yep, forgery confirmed. Metadata doesn't match. Copy-paste artifacts everywhere. Relief washed through me, but it was short-lived. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. This proves he faked the documents. But will the board care? That depends on whether they value truth or convenience. I sat down across from her, my voice barely above a whisper. What if they'd rather bury it than confront him? She looked at me, her eyes sharp. Then we force them to confront it. If necessary, we'll go public. The press loves stories like this: abuse of power, corporate cover-ups. Stanton can't survive that kind of spotlight. The thought of going public both thrilled and terrified me. To expose him meant exposing myself too. Every humiliation, every tear. But maybe that was the price of freedom. 2 days later, the board reconvened. The air in the room was thick with tension, like the moment before a storm breaks. Stanton was already seated, smug and confident, his assistant hovering nearby. He didn't even glance at me as I entered. Harold Briggs cleared his throat. "We've had the documents reviewed. The forensic team found irregularities." Stanton straightened, his smile unwavering. Irregularities? Or bias? I wouldn't put it past Evelyn to meddle with the review. Evelyn stood. "With all due respect, this wasn't my team's assessment alone. Independent specialists confirmed the same. Your so-called evidence is fabricated." She placed a thick folder on the table. "Here's the full report, every forgery documented." The board members passed the folder around, flipping through the damning details. Stanton's face darkened, though he tried to mask it with a sneer. "This is absurd," he snapped. "Why would I waste time fabricating evidence? I run this company. I don't answer to petty vendettas." I stood then, my voice steady. "Because you're terrified. You knew the truth was coming out, and you tried to bury it with lies. But now everyone here can see what you really are: a fraud, a bully, and a coward." The words hung in the air like a slap. For the first time, Stanton looked rattled. His hand twitched against the table, his smirk faltering. Board member Charles Greer leaned forward, his tone calm but firm. "Mr. Stanton, fabricating evidence to discredit a former employee is not only unethical, it's grounds for immediate termination. This board cannot ignore what's been uncovered." Murmurs of agreement echoed around the table. Stanton's eyes darted from face to face, realizing the tide was turning. But he wasn't finished. His voice rose, desperate now. "You think you can get rid of me so easily? I built this empire. Every one of you owes your careers to me. You think investors will stick around without Stanton at the helm? You'll sink without me." Harold Briggs's expression hardened. "Perhaps it's time we find out." The meeting adjourned for deliberation. Stanton stormed out, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. As he passed me, he leaned in close, his breath hot against my ear. "Enjoy this little victory. It won't last." I shivered, but for the first time, his threats didn't paralyze me, because I saw it, fear in his eyes. The board would announce their decision tomorrow. One way or another, Stanton's reign was hanging by a thread. The morning of the board's final decision was the longest walk of my life. Every step toward the glass tower where Stanton and Co. are held its meetings felt like dragging chains behind me. The city was bustling, honking horns, coffee carts, people rushing to work. But for me, time had slowed. I wasn't just going to a meeting. I was walking straight into the moment that would define my future. Evelyn walked beside me, as steady as ever, her heels clicking against the pavement. "Remember," she murmured, "this isn't about whether Stanton will try one last trick. It's about whether the board is strong enough to see through it. Trust yourself, Marissa. You've already exposed him." I nodded, though my chest felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. I wanted to believe her. I needed to. When we entered the boardroom, the tension was palpable. Conversations hushed the moment I stepped inside. Board members sat stiffly in their chairs, eyes darting between Stanton and me like spectators at the edge of a battlefield. And there he was, Stanton. Perfectly pressed suit, polished cufflinks, hair slicked back. But his eyes, they betrayed him. Bloodshot, restless, fevered. He looked like a man who hadn't slept, who had been pacing all night in a cage of his own making. Harold Briggs, the chairman, cleared his throat. "This board has gathered to deliver its final decision on the leadership of Stanton and Co. After reviewing the evidence and the testimonies, a vote will be conducted today." The words should have given me relief. But before the board could proceed, Stanton shot to his feet. His chair screeched against the marble floor, the sound grating like nails on glass. Before you waste time on your little vote, he announced, his voice dripping with contempt, I have something the board must see. Evidence that proves this entire charade is nothing more than a staged coup. My stomach plummeted. Not again. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and the boardroom monitor flickered to life. A video clip appeared. Grainy, clearly from a hidden camera. It was me, sitting across from Evelyn in a quiet cafe. My voice echoed through the speakers. We'll take him down, no matter what. A sharp gasp broke through the room. Whispers surged instantly, board members leaning toward one another. Stanton's smirk spread like oil on water. Do you hear that? He said, gesturing to the screen. This wasn't about truth, it was a conspiracy. Evelyn and her pet project here plotted to destroy me from the beginning. Fabricated evidence, false sob stories, it was all staged. My heart raced, my skin burning. He had been spying on me, recording private conversations. My hands clenched into fists under the table. Evelyn rose, her voice calm but firm. That clip is taken out of context. Yes, we said we'd take him down, and we meant through legal, legitimate means, collecting evidence, exposing misconduct, holding him accountable. Unlike Stanton, we don't fabricate lies. But Stanton wouldn't let go. He turned to the board, his voice booming. Theatrical. Don't you see? This entire spectacle was engineered. Evelyn has wanted my position for years. She manipulated this poor, naive girl into becoming her pawn. And now you're about to hand her the company on a silver platter. His words stung, not because they were true, but because of how convincingly he said them. For a moment, I saw hesitation in some of the board members' eyes. Doubt. I couldn't sit in silence any longer. I stood, my legs trembling but my voice steady, with raw emotion. Yes, I said those words. And you know why? Because I was tired of being humiliated. I was tired of giving everything to this company and being treated like dirt. I wanted justice. I wanted to see Stanton held accountable for every cruel word, every stolen idea, every threat. If that makes me guilty, then I'll stand guilty, with my head held high. My chest rose and fell rapidly. The room was silent, every eye locked on me. But ask yourselves this. Who has more to gain by lying? Me, a woman who lost her job, her reputation, her stability? Or Stanton, who stands to lose everything he built on fear and intimidation? Stanton sneered. She's putting on another performance. Don't fall for it. But the tone of the room had shifted. The board members weren't looking at me with doubt anymore. They were looking at him with unease, even disgust. Charles Greer leaned forward, his voice calm but cutting. Mr. Stanton, planting surveillance devices on former employees is not only unethical, it's potentially criminal. If this is your defense, I fear you've only dug yourself deeper. Stanton's face twitched, his mask slipping. You fools, he spat. You think you can survive without me? Investors will pull out. Clients will flee. This company will crumble the second I walk out that door. Harold Briggs, composed as ever, raised his hand for silence. Then it is time we find out. This board will proceed to a vote. The room held its breath. Hands began to rise. First Charles, then another, then another. Stanton's eyes darted frantically as each hand sealed his fate. Finally, Harold Briggs raised his own hand. The majority was clear. It is the unanimous decision of this board, Briggs declared, that Stanton be removed from his position as CEO effective immediately. Evelyn Carter will serve as interim leader until a permanent successor is chosen. The room erupted, some in quiet relief, others in shock. I just stood frozen, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. Stanton's face turned crimson, veins bulging at his temples. You traitors, he roared, slamming his fist on the table so hard the pens rattled. You'll regret this, all of you. He stormed out of the room, his footsteps echoing like thunder. But before he disappeared through the door, his eyes locked on mine. His lips curled into a twisted smile, and he mouthed the words, "This isn't over." A chill ran down my spine. Even in defeat, Stanton's shadow lingered. I sank back into my chair, trembling from head to toe. Evelyn placed her hand gently over mine. "It's done," she whispered. "He's gone." But as I looked at the door Stanton had stormed through, I knew one thing with certainty. Men like him didn't disappear quietly. He'd be back one way or another. And when he did, I had to be ready. The boardroom was still buzzing after Stanton stormed out, but I barely heard any of it. My ears rang, my pulse thundered, and my body felt both weightless and unbearably heavy at the same time. For months, I had lived under his shadow, crushed by his cruelty. And now, suddenly, he was gone. At least officially. I turned to Evelyn, searching her face for reassurance. She gave me the faintest smile, but I could see it in her eyes. She was already thinking 3 steps ahead. "Enjoy this moment, Marissa," she whispered. "But remember, people like Stanton don't just vanish. He'll try to claw his way back. And when he does, you'll need to be stronger than ever." Her words echoed in my chest, stirring both fear and determination. Harold Briggs tapped his gavel gently against the table. "The board thanks Ms. Marissa Clark for her testimony and courage in coming forward. Without it, we might have remained blind to Mr. Stanton's misconduct. We owe you a debt." The way he said it, me, someone the company once discarded like trash, left me fighting back tears. Charles Greer added, "If you're willing, Marissa, the board would like to consult with you as we move into this transition. You have insight into both the company culture and Mr. Stanton's abuses. That perspective is invaluable." I blinked, stunned. A week ago, I was jobless and humiliated. Now the board of Stanton and Cobber wanted my input. I'd be honored, I managed to say. After the meeting adjourned, Evelyn and I stepped outside into the crisp afternoon air. The city felt brighter, the sky clearer, like the world itself had shifted just slightly in my favor. She squeezed my shoulder. "You did it. Don't underestimate that. You faced him, you told your truth, and you won." But my victory was bittersweet. That night, alone in my apartment, I sat at my desk staring at the same folder of evidence that had once been my lifeline. It was strange. Without Stanton looming over me, the evidence felt like ashes, remnants of a battle fought and won. Yet his last words, "This isn't over," echoed in my head like a curse. My phone buzzed with dozens of messages, congratulations from coworkers, former colleagues thanking me for standing up, even strangers online who had caught wind of the story. I should have felt triumphant, but I couldn't shake the unease crawling under my skin. Sure enough, 2 days later, headlines started popping up. "Disgraced CEO Stanton claims corporate coup." Stanton, board manipulated by rival. He was still fighting, clawing through the media, twisting the narrative. Evelyn wasn't surprised. "Let him scream into the void," she said coolly. "Every word he utters only makes him look more unstable." But I knew better than to underestimate him. Then came the surprise. A week after Stanton's removal, the board invited me back. Not just to consult. They offered me a full-time role, Director of Workplace Integrity, a new position they created to ensure no employee would ever again suffer what I had endured. My breath caught. Me, the same woman Stanton fired in front of everyone on her birthday, now entrusted with building a healthier culture? I accepted, of course. And stepping back into those halls, I expected to feel haunted. But instead, I felt something I hadn't in years' purpose. On my first day, whispers followed me down the corridor. But these weren't the whispers Stanton had spread. These were filled with respect, even awe. One junior analyst shyly approached me at the elevator. "Ms. Clark," she said, "I just wanted to thank you. I was so scared when all that happened, but you gave us hope." Her words cracked something open inside me. All those nights I cried, thinking I was weak, thinking no one saw me. Turns out they had. And my fight wasn't just for me. It was for all of them. Of course, Stanton didn't vanish. Every so often, I'd hear of some new scheme, some desperate attempt to reinsert himself into relevance. But the more he thrashed, the clearer it became. His era was over. He was a man drowning in his own arrogance, and I was no longer chained to his storm. One evening, after a long day, I returned home to find a small package on my doorstep. My chest tightened. It was unmarked, no return address. Carefully, I opened it. Inside was a single cufflink, gleaming, expensive, unmistakably Stanton style. A message was scribbled on the card. "See you soon." For a moment, fear threatened to choke me, but then something unexpected happened. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I realized he no longer had power over me. He was trying to scare me, to pull me back into the cage he once controlled. But the lock was gone, the bars melted away. I wasn't the same woman he had humiliated. I texted Evelyn a photo of the cufflink. Her response came quickly. "Ignore him. He's trying to bait you. You've already won." And she was right. My battle with Stanton wasn't about destroying him. It was about freeing myself. Months passed. The company healed, slowly but surely. Employees spoke up more freely. Initiatives for fairness and well-being flourished. And every so often, I'd catch my reflection in the boardroom glass and almost not recognize myself. The woman standing tall, voice steady, unafraid. One day, after presenting a new policy to the board, Harold Briggs pulled me aside. "You know," he said, his eyes kind, "the irony isn't lost on us. Stanton fired you on your birthday. And now, here you are, reshaping the very legacy he tried to control. I'd call that the sweetest revenge." I smiled softly. "It's not revenge anymore. It's redemption." But deep down, I knew both were true. So to anyone listening to my story right now, maybe you've been humiliated, underestimated, even cast aside, hear me clearly. The end someone writes for you doesn't have to be the final chapter. You can take back the pen. You can write your own ending. And if you've ever been cornered by someone like Stanton, let my journey be proof. You can stand back up. You can fight. And you can win. Because the day Stanton tried to ruin me was the day I started to rebuild. Myself stronger than ever. And now, as I close this chapter, I want to thank you for listening, for walking through every twist and betrayal with me. If my story moved you, if you found even a spark of strength in it, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Who knows? Maybe your story will be the next one we tell here. Until then, remember, even the darkest betrayal can lead to the brightest redemption.